The night my wife told me I wasn't worth touching, I was standing in our kitchen holding a bottle of wine I'd bought to celebrate our 11th wedding anniversary. Marissa didn't even look up from her phone when she said it. "Don't touch me until I decide you've earned it, Drew." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Just like that. No explanation, no context, just a declaration delivered with the casual cruelty of someone ordering coffee. I set the wine down on our granite countertop, the one she'd insisted we needed to keep up with the Hendersons, and watched her scroll through Instagram, double-tapping photos of people living lives she thought we should be living. "Earned it how?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew I didn't want the answer. She finally looked up, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not frustration, something colder. Calculation. "Figure it out," she said, standing up and smoothing her yoga pants. "I'm going to Tiffany's for wine night. Don't wait up." That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've been doing a lot of figuring. My name is Drew Keller, and I'm a project manager for a construction company that builds strip malls and office complexes around Boston. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well enough to afford the suburban life Marissa always said she wanted. 4-bedroom colonial, 2-car garage, good schools for our 10-year-old daughter Ruby. The American dream wrapped in beige siding and mortgage payments. For 11 years, I thought we were happy. Sure, we had our problems. Who doesn't? But I thought we were solid. I thought we were a team. I was wrong about a lot of things. The first sign should have been the new perfume. Marissa had worn the same vanilla-scented stuff since college, but suddenly she was coming home smelling like something expensive and floral. When I mentioned it, she said Amber had given her a sample from Sephora. "It's called Seduction," she said, not looking at me. "Do you like it?" I told her I did, because that's what husbands do. We lie about perfume and pretend not to notice when our wives start doing squats in the living room while watching workout videos, or when they suddenly develop an interest in protein shakes and CrossFit terminology. The second sign was the way she started dressing for her girls' nights. Marissa had always been attractive. Shoulder-length blonde hair, green eyes, the kind of smile that made waiters give us extra breadsticks. But she'd never been the type to spend 2 hours getting ready to hang out with Tiffany and Amber. Suddenly, she was curling her hair and wearing dresses that showed off the results of all those squats. "You look nice," I'd say, because that's what husbands do. "Thanks," she'd reply, already halfway out the door. The third sign was Ruby. My daughter started asking why Mommy was always gone, why she didn't help with homework anymore, why she seemed angry all the time. Ruby's a smart kid, smarter than both her parents, probably, and she notices things, the way Marissa would snap at her for leaving toys in the living room, the way she'd sigh dramatically when Ruby wanted to watch a movie together, the way she'd check her phone constantly during dinner, smiling at messages she never shared. "Is Mommy okay?" Ruby asked me one night while I was tucking her in. "She's fine, sweetheart," I said, "just stressed about work." Another lie. Marissa's job at the marketing firm was going great. She'd been promoted to senior account manager 6 months ago, complete with a raise and her own office. She'd celebrated by buying herself a new wardrobe and joining the gym where all her new friends worked out. The gym where she met Troy Bennett. I didn't know about Troy yet, not specifically, but I knew something was wrong when I found the receipt in her purse while looking for gum. 2 smoothies at Flex Appeal Nutrition. 2. Marissa hated smoothies, said they were basically milkshakes for people who want to feel superior. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while my wife slept beside me, smelling like that expensive perfume and someone else's cologne. I thought about the receipt, about the new clothes, about the way she'd started working out twice a day and talking about maximizing my potential and living authentically. I thought about the way she'd looked at me in the kitchen 3 weeks ago, like I was something she'd found stuck to her shoe. Don't touch me until I decide you've earned it. The thing about being married for 11 years is that you develop a kind of radar for your spouse's moods and motivations. You learn to read the signs, the way they stand when they're lying, the tone they use when they're hiding something, the expression they wear when they're already gone but haven't figured out how to leave yet. Marissa was already gone. She just hadn't figured out how to leave. But I had figured out something else. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you certain advantages. People assume that because you manage construction projects and drink beer while watching football, you're not paying attention to the details. They assume that because you don't spend an hour styling your hair or posting inspirational quotes on social media, you're not capable of strategic thinking. They're wrong. I'd been watching Marissa for 2 weeks, and the pattern was becoming clear. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Girls' night at various locations that seemed to change every week. Tuesday, Thursday. Late nights at the office, supposedly working on the Henderson Industries account. Weekends. Errands that took 3 times longer than they should and came with increasingly elaborate explanations. I had to go to 3 different stores to find the right kind of olive oil, she'd say, returning from a 4-hour grocery run with 1 bag of items. Traffic was insane coming back from the mall, she'd explain, walking in with no shopping bags at all. The lies were getting lazy, which meant she was getting confident. That was her first mistake. Her second mistake was underestimating my friendship with Nate Morrison. Nate owns a bar called The Penalty Box in downtown Boston, and he's been my best friend since we were 12 years old. He's also the kind of guy who knows everyone and hears everything, especially when it comes to the social lives of suburban women who like to feel dangerous by drinking cocktails in the city. "Your wife's been coming in," he told me over beers on a Thursday night. "With that crew of hers, Tiffany, Amber, and some guy who looks like he fell out of a fitness magazine." I kept my expression neutral. "Yeah? How often?" 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Always the same table in the back corner, always lots of whispering and giggling. Nate took a long pull from his beer. "The guy's name is Troy something, drives a red Jeep with one of those Fit Life bumper stickers. Sounds like a real winner." "Oh, he is. Spent 20 minutes telling the bartender about his macros and his transformation journey. Also mentioned he's a personal trainer at some CrossFit place in Brookline." I nodded like this was all news to me. "Interesting. Drew." Nate leaned forward, his expression serious. "I've known you since middle school. I was at your wedding. I'm Ruby's godfather. So when I tell you this, understand it's coming from a place of love. Your wife is acting like a woman who's shopping for an upgrade." I finished my beer and signaled for another. "What makes you say that?" "The way she looks at this Troy guy, the way she hangs on his every word, the way she introduced him to her friends as her fitness coach, with air quotes." Nate shook his head. "And the way she talks about you when she thinks no one's listening. That got my attention." "What does she say?" "Nothing specific, just the tone. Like you're a burden she's carrying. Like she's outgrown you and everyone should understand why." I sat with that information for a moment, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. I'd moved past that already. Something else. Something that felt like clarity. "Thanks for telling me," I said. "What are you going to do?" I looked at my oldest friend, this guy who'd been there for every important moment of my adult life, and realized I had no idea how to answer that question. What do you do when you discover your wife is actively auditioning your replacement? When you realize the person you've built a life with has already written you out of the story? "I'm going to figure out what I've earned," I said. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Brookline. It didn't take long to find the CrossFit gym. There are only so many places that cater to people who think burpees are a personality trait. Iron Will Fitness occupied a converted warehouse, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows that let everyone see how dedicated and authentic the members were. I parked across the street and waited. At 10:30 a.m., a red Jeep pulled into the parking lot. The driver was exactly what I'd expected. 6'2", professionally tanned, wearing a tank top that showcased arms that had clearly been sculpted for Instagram. He had the kind of aggressively styled hair that required both product and effort, and he walked with the confident swagger of a man who'd never been told his opinions about anything weren't fascinating. This was Troy Bennett, and he was everything I wasn't. I watched him unlock the gym and start his day, greeting early clients with the kind of enthusiastic energy that probably cost extra. Around noon, I saw something that made my blood pressure spike. Marissa's silver Honda pulling into the lot. She got out wearing yoga pants and a sports bra I'd never seen before, her hair pulled back in a high ponytail that swished when she walked. She looked good, really good, and she knew it. I could tell by the way she moved, the way she smiled at Troy when he came out to meet her. They hugged, not a quick, friendly hug, a long, intimate embrace that lingered just a beat too long. Then they went inside together, and I sat in my truck for the next hour, watching through those floor-to-ceiling windows as my wife let another man put his hands all over her in the name of fitness coaching. When the session ended, they stood close together by the front desk, talking in the intense, focused way that people do when they're sharing secrets. Troy reached out and touched her arm. She laughed and touched his chest. It was a perfect little moment of intimacy, framed by the gym's windows like a movie scene designed to break someone's heart. But my heart was already broken. What I felt instead was something much more useful. Anger. Cold, clean, productive anger. I drove home and spent the afternoon researching Troy Bennett. Social media made it easy. The guy documented every aspect of his life like he was running for mayor of Instagram. Shirtless workout videos, motivational quotes over sunset photos, pictures of expensive meals with captions about earning your carbs. He was 39 years old, divorced, and had been working at Iron Will for 8 months. Before that, he'd been at 3 other gyms in 2 years. His LinkedIn profile was full of buzzwords about lifestyle optimization and authentic transformation. His Facebook was a gallery of selfies and humble brags. He was also, I discovered after some deeper digging, not quite as successful as he pretended to be. His apartment was in a complex that catered to people who wanted to look like they had money but actually lived paycheck to paycheck. His Jeep was 3 years old with payments he complained about in now-deleted posts. His coaching certification came from a weekend seminar, not an accredited program. Troy Bennett was a fraud, and my wife was falling for it. That evening, Marissa came home glowing with endorphins and whatever else she'd been doing at the gym. She kissed my cheek, actually kissed me, and announced she was making salmon for dinner. "How was your day?" she asked like she cared. "Fine," I said. "How was yours?" "Great. I had an amazing workout with Troy. He's really helping me push past my limits." I'll bet he is, I thought. But what I said was, "That's nice, honey." She started preparing dinner, humming to herself, and for a moment I almost convinced myself I was wrong about everything. Maybe it really was just fitness coaching. Maybe I was being paranoid and jealous and stupid. Then her phone buzzed with a text message, and I saw her face light up in a way it hadn't for me in months. "Who's that?" I asked. "Just Tiffany," she said, but she was already typing back, smiling at the screen like it contained the secrets of the universe. That night, after Ruby was asleep and Marissa was in the shower, I did something I'd never done in 11 years of marriage. I looked at her phone. The most recent text wasn't from Tiffany. It was from Coach T, and it said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. We'll work on those deep stretches you wanted to try." Her response, "I'm ready for anything you want to teach me." I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and went to bed. Marissa joined me an hour later, smelling like that expensive perfume, and curled up on her side of the mattress like there was an invisible wall between us. "Good night, Drew," she said. "Good night, Marissa." But I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to my wife breathe, and planned my next move. The thing about revenge is that it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And like any good marathon, you need proper preparation, the right equipment, and a support team that believes in your ability to cross the finish line. My first recruit was Ruby's babysitter, Mrs. Chen, from next door. She was 73 years old, had been married for 52 years, and possessed the kind of old-school wisdom that comes from watching several generations of people make the same stupid mistakes. "Your wife is having an affair," she told me matter-of-factly while we watched Ruby play in her backyard. "I can tell by the way she dresses now, and the way she looks at her phone, and the way she doesn't look at you." "What makes you so sure?" Mrs. Chen gave me the look she probably reserved for particularly slow grandchildren. "Drew, honey, I've been alive for 7 decades. I know what a woman looks like when she's getting attention from a new man. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I'm still figuring that out." "Well, figure it out fast. That little girl deserves better than parents who lie to each other." She was right, of course. Ruby was already showing signs of stress, trouble sleeping, grades slipping slightly, asking more questions about why Mommy and Daddy seemed sad all the time. Whatever I decided to do, I needed to do it quickly and cleanly. My second recruit was Linda Martinez, the best divorce attorney in Boston. I'd met her at a construction industry mixer 2 years ago, and she'd given me her card just in case you ever need someone who knows how to protect assets. At the time, I'd thought it was a joke. "It's not a joke now," she told me during our consultation. "Your wife is setting up an exit strategy, and you need one too. The good news is that Massachusetts is a no-fault state, so her affair won't matter for the divorce itself. The bad news is that if you don't document everything properly, you could lose a lot more than your marriage." Linda was in her 50s, with steel gray hair and the kind of sharp eyes that could spot financial deception from 3 counties away. She wore expensive suits and charged accordingly, but she was worth every penny. "Here's what we're going to do," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "You're going to open a separate bank account and start moving money. Not hiding it, that's illegal, but protecting it. You're going to document every suspicious expense, every lie, every time she's supposed to be somewhere she's not, and you're going to do it all quietly, without tipping her off." "How long do I have?" "Based on what you've told me. Not long. She's already emotionally checked out, and she's building a case for why the divorce is your fault. The working late, the girls' nights, the sudden interest in fitness. She's creating a narrative where she's the victim of a stagnant marriage who deserves a fresh start." I signed Linda's retainer agreement and walked out of her office, feeling like I'd just enlisted in a war I hadn't started, but was damn well going to finish. My third recruit was the most important, Nate. "You want me to do what?" he asked when I laid out my plan. "I want you to keep serving my wife and her friends. Keep listening to their conversations. Keep track of who they're with and what they're talking about. And when the time comes, I want you to help me make sure everyone knows exactly who Marissa Keller really is." We were sitting in his bar after closing time, splitting a bottle of whiskey and planning what he kept calling Operation Worthiness. "This is either the most brilliant thing you've ever thought of or the stupidest," he said. "I'm not sure which." "Probably both." "What about Ruby?" That was the question that kept me awake at night. What about Ruby? How do you protect your daughter from the fallout of your marriage exploding? How do you make sure she doesn't blame herself for her parents' failures? "Ruby comes first," I said. "Whatever happens, she comes first. That's why I need to do this right, clean and quick, with no collateral damage." Nate poured himself another drink. "All right, I'm in. But if this goes sideways, I'm claiming I was drunk and didn't know what I was agreeing to." Fair enough. My fourth and final recruit was someone Marissa would never suspect, Tiffany's ex-husband, Mike. Mike worked in IT for a company that handled social media management, and he'd been paying alimony to Tiffany for 3 years. More importantly, He despised his ex-wife and everything she represented, including her toxic friend group and their mutual encouragement of each other's worst impulses. "Tiffany's been bragging about your wife's upgrade for weeks," he told me when I reached out. "Says Marissa finally found someone who appreciates her full potential. Makes me sick." "What exactly has she been saying?" "That your wife deserves better than a basic suburban dad who doesn't understand her needs. That this Troy guy is everything you're not. Ambitious, passionate, physically fit. That Marissa is finally living the life she was meant to live." Mike was a thin, nervous man who wore his bitterness like cologne, but he had something I needed: access to the social media accounts and private messages of people in Marissa's circle. "I'm not asking you to hack anything," I clarified. "I just want to know what they're posting publicly. What they're saying about me, about my marriage, about their plans. Consider it done. Tiffany thinks she's so smart, but she has the digital security awareness of a goldfish. Half her accounts are still logged in on the laptop I kept when we split up." By the end of March, I had my team in place and my strategy mapped out. Marissa thought she was playing chess while I played checkers, but she was wrong. I was playing chess too. I was just playing a longer game. The first move came on a Wednesday night when Marissa announced she was going to girls' night at a new wine bar in Cambridge. "Have fun," I said, kissing her cheek. But instead of staying home like the boring suburban dad she thought I was, I drove to Iron Will Fitness and waited. Sure enough, at 8:30 p.m., Troy Bennett came out of the gym and got into his red Jeep. I followed him to a hotel bar in downtown Boston, where he met my wife for what was very obviously not a girls' night. I took pictures, not of them kissing or touching. I wasn't trying to be a private investigator, but of them together, clearly on a date, in a public place where they thought no one would recognize them. Then I sent the photos to Mike, who forwarded them to his contact at the hotel, a bartender who remembered serving them because Troy had made a big show of ordering expensive scotch and talking loudly about his business ventures. "They've been coming in every Wednesday for 3 weeks, the bartender told Mike. "Always the same table, always very cozy. The guy tips well, but he's kind of a jerk. Keeps calling me buddy and asking if I even lift." Perfect. The second move came when I started showing up at places where I knew Marissa and Troy would be. Not to confront them, not yet, but to let them know they weren't as invisible as they thought. I'd grab coffee at the Starbucks near the gym right before Marissa's training sessions. I'd eat lunch at restaurants near Troy's apartment. I'd shop at the grocery store where they'd been spotted together. Always polite, always friendly, always just a little too coincidental to ignore. "Did you see Drew at Whole Foods yesterday?" I heard Tiffany ask Marissa during one of their phone calls that Mike was monitoring. "Yeah, that was weird. What was he doing in Cambridge?" "Maybe he's following you." "Don't be paranoid. Drew doesn't have the imagination to follow anyone." "Wrong again, sweetheart." The third move was the most subtle. I started being the perfect husband. Flowers for no reason. Compliments about her workouts. Interest in her day. Her friends. Her goals. I even suggested we should renew our gym membership so we could work out together. "That's sweet, honey, but I'm really happy with my current trainer," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Of course, Troy, right? Nate mentioned seeing you guys at his bar. Says he seems like a great guy." The color drained from her face. "Nate saw us?" "Yeah, when you were there with the girls. He said Troy was telling everyone about his fitness philosophy. Sounds really interesting." She relaxed slightly, not realizing that I'd just confirmed she'd been lying about her whereabouts and that people were watching her more closely than she knew. "Yeah, he's very passionate about health and wellness. I'd love to meet him sometime." "Maybe," she said, but her tone suggested that would happen when hell froze over. By the middle of April, the pressure was starting to show. Marissa was jumpier, more defensive, quicker to anger when Ruby asked innocent questions about her schedule. She'd started working out at home sometimes, doing yoga in the living room while texting constantly on her phone. Troy was getting nervous too. Mike's surveillance of social media showed him posting increasingly desperate content about haters and people who don't understand the grind. He'd also started talking about leaving Boston for new opportunities, which suggested he was getting ready to either commit to Marissa or cut and run. It was time for the next phase of my plan. The thing about suburban social circles is that they're built on a foundation of carefully maintained illusions. Everyone pretends to be happier, wealthier, and more fulfilled than they actually are. Everyone pretends their marriages are solid, their children are gifted, and their life choices are perfectly rational. But underneath all that pretense is a hunger for drama, for someone else's life to fall apart in an entertaining way. They want front row seats to a disaster, as long as it's not their disaster. I was about to give them exactly what they wanted. The opportunity came in the form of the annual Brookline Community Center charity auction, a spring fundraiser that attracted every social climber in a 20-mile radius. Marissa had been talking about it for weeks, planning her outfit like she was attending the Met Gala. "It's important for my career," she explained, trying on her third dress of the evening. "A lot of potential clients will be there." What she didn't say, but what Mike's intelligence network had revealed, was that Troy would also be there. He'd bought a ticket using money he'd borrowed from his roommate, and he was planning to bid on a weekend getaway package that he and Marissa could enjoy together. "How romantic," I'd said when Mike told me. "A stolen weekend paid for with borrowed money. Real classy." I bought my own ticket to the auction, something that surprised Marissa since I'd never shown interest in charity events before. "You want to come with me?" she asked, and I could hear the panic in her voice. "Actually, I thought I'd go with Nate. Bachelor's night out, supporting a good cause. We might even bid on something." She looked relieved. "That sounds nice." What she didn't know was that Nate had invited several other people to join our table: Mike, Mrs. Chen, Linda the lawyer, and 3 of my co-workers who'd heard enough about my situation to want to see how it played out. The auction was held in the community center's main hall, with round tables arranged around a small stage where a professional auctioneer worked through donated items ranging from restaurant gift certificates to vacation packages. Marissa sat with her usual crowd, Tiffany, Amber, and 2 other women whose names I'd never bothered to learn, at a table near the front. Troy sat by himself at a smaller table in the back, trying to look casual while obviously waiting for the right moment to approach Marissa's group. "This is like watching a nature documentary," Nate whispered. "Look at him preening." Troy had dressed for the occasion in a suit that was slightly too tight and definitely too expensive for his budget. His hair was styled to perfection, and he kept checking his phone and scanning the room like he was expecting photographers. The first part of the evening went smoothly. Dinner was served, speeches were made, and the auction began with smaller items that drew polite bidding from the crowd. I watched Marissa laugh at her friends' jokes and check her phone discreetly, probably coordinating with Troy about when and how he should join their table. Then came the weekend getaway package, 2 nights at a bed and breakfast in Vermont, complete with spa treatments and gourmet meals. The bidding started at $500. Troy's hand went up immediately. "We have 500 from table 12, the auctioneer announced. "Do I hear 600? An older woman near the front raised her paddle. 600. Troy countered with 700, then 800, then $1,000 he clearly didn't have. I could see the sweat starting to form on his forehead as the bidding escalated beyond his means. 1,500, called out a man I didn't recognize. Troy looked panicked. He glanced toward Marissa's table, obviously hoping for some kind of signal or support, but she was studiously avoiding eye contact. "Going once at 1,500, the auctioneer said. That's when I raised my paddle. 2,000, I called out, loud enough for the entire room to hear. Every head turned toward our table. Marissa's face went white. Troy looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. "We have 2,000 from table 8, the auctioneer announced cheerfully. Do I hear 2,500? Silence. Going once, going twice, sold to table 8 for $2,000. The room erupted in polite applause, but I could feel the weight of dozens of stares. I'd just spent $2,000 on a romantic weekend getaway while sitting at a table full of men, and everyone was trying to figure out what that meant. Congratulations, Nate said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Marissa's going to love Vermont. But Marissa wasn't looking at me with gratitude or excitement. She was looking at me with something that might have been fear. After the auction ended and people began mingling over coffee and dessert, Troy finally worked up the courage to approach Marissa's table. I watched from across the room as he leaned in close to whisper something in her ear. She shook her head slightly, glanced in my direction, and whispered something back. Their conversation lasted less than 2 minutes, but it was long enough for several people to notice and start speculating. By the time Troy walked away, heading straight for the exit without saying goodbye to anyone, the gossip mill was already grinding. "Who was that guy talking to Marissa?" I heard someone ask. "Her personal trainer, I think," came the response. "Seemed upset about something." I waited until Marissa and her friends were getting ready to leave before making my move. I walked over to their table with a smile and the confidence of a man who'd just won a bidding war. "Ladies," I said, nodding to the group. "Great event tonight." "Hi, Drew," Tiffany said, with the fake sweetness she reserved for people she was about to gossip about. "Congratulations on your winning bid. That's quite a generous donation." "Well, it's for a good cause. Plus, Marissa and I haven't had a romantic getaway in years. Seemed like the perfect opportunity." I turned to my wife, who was sitting frozen in her chair like a deer caught in headlights. "What do you think, honey? Vermont in the spring? We could use some time alone together." "That sounds lovely," she managed, but her voice was strained. "Great. I'll call them tomorrow and set up the dates." I leaned down and kissed her cheek, noting that she smelled like that expensive perfume again. "I'll see you at home. Don't stay out too late." As I walked away, I could hear the conversation starting behind me. Questions about the mysterious man who'd been talking to Marissa. Comments about how romantic my gesture was. Speculation about why she looked so uncomfortable about a surprise weekend getaway with her own husband. Nate caught up with me in the parking lot, grinning like he'd just watched the best movie of his life. "That was beautiful," he said. "Absolutely beautiful. Did you see Troy's face when you outbid him?" "I saw it. And Marissa, she looked like she was about to throw up." "She probably was. So what's the next move?" I got into my truck and rolled down the window. "Now we wait. She's going to have to make a choice. Come clean about the affair or go to Vermont with me and pretend everything's fine. What if she chooses option 3 and just refuses to go?" I started the engine and smiled. Then everyone will want to know why a wife wouldn't want to go on a romantic getaway that her husband just spent $2,000 to win for her. "You're a devious bastard, Drew Keller." "I'm learning." When I got home, Ruby was already asleep and the house was quiet. I sat in the kitchen with a beer and waited for Marissa to come home, thinking about how the evening had unfolded and what it meant for the next phase of my plan. She walked in at 11:30, moving quietly like she hoped I'd already gone to bed. When she saw me sitting at the kitchen table, she jumped slightly. "Oh, you're still up." "Waiting for you. We need to talk." She set down her purse and crossed her arms defensively. "About what?" "About Vermont, about us, about whatever's been going on with you for the past 2 months." "I don't know what you mean." "Marissa, I'm not stupid. I know something's changed. I know you're unhappy. I know you've been lying to me about where you go and who you're with." For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. I could see her weighing her options, trying to decide whether honesty or continued deception was the safer choice. She chose deception. "You're being paranoid, Drew. I've been working hard and trying to take better care of myself. If that threatens you somehow, that's your problem, not mine." It doesn't threaten me. It worries me. We used to talk about everything. Now I feel like I'm living with a stranger. Maybe you are, she said quietly. There it was, the closest thing to honesty I'd gotten from her in months. What does that mean? She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her making another calculation. How much truth could she give me without revealing everything? How much could she hurt me without destroying her own position? It means I'm not the same person I was when we got married. It means I want different things now. It means maybe we both need to figure out what we really want from this marriage. And what do you want? I want to feel alive again. I want to feel like I matter. I want to be with someone who sees my potential instead of just taking me for granted. Someone like Troy, she didn't say, but we both heard it anyway. I never took you for granted, I said. Didn't you? When was the last time you really looked at me, Drew? When was the last time you made me feel like I was more than just the person who does your laundry and raises your daughter? Our daughter. Right, our daughter. She picked up her purse and headed for the stairs. I'm tired. We can talk about Vermont later. We're going, I said to her back. I spent $2,000 on that weekend, and we're going. She paused at the bottom of the stairs but didn't turn around. Fine, we'll go, but don't expect it to fix anything. After she went upstairs, I sat in the kitchen for another hour, thinking about what she'd said and what she hadn't said. She was right about some things. I had taken her for granted sometimes, and I hadn't always made her feel appreciated. But that didn't justify what she was doing. That didn't make her lies and betrayal acceptable. And it definitely didn't mean I was going to make this easy for her. Vermont in May is beautiful, which made what I was about to do feel almost criminal. The bed and breakfast sat on 50 acres of rolling hills covered in wildflowers, with a view of the mountains that belonged on a postcard. Under different circumstances, it might have been the romantic getaway Marissa and I both needed. Instead, it was going to be the place where our marriage officially ended. We'd driven up in relative silence, making small talk about the scenery and Ruby's upcoming school play while carefully avoiding any mention of the tension that had been building since the charity auction. Marissa had packed like she was going to a photo shoot. 3 different outfits for 2 days, enough makeup to stock a department store counter, and that expensive perfume that now made my stomach turn. This is nice, she said as we checked into our room, a converted barn loft with exposed beams and a king-sized bed covered in what the website had called luxury linens. It is, I agreed, setting our bags down and walking to the window. Very romantic. She was quiet for a moment, and when I turned around, she was looking at her phone. No signal, she said, frowning. That's the point. It's a digital detox weekend. Just us, no distractions. The look she gave me was pure panic, quickly covered by a forced smile. Right, just us. What Marissa didn't know was that I'd specifically chosen this place because of its remoteness. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, no way for her to communicate with Troy or anyone else. For the next 48 hours, she was going to have to deal with me and only me. We spent the first day doing couple things, hiking trails, wine tasting, sharing meals that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a week. Marissa played her part perfectly, smiling and laughing and pretending to enjoy my company, but I could see the strain around her eyes. She kept checking her phone compulsively, even though she knew it was useless. You seem anxious, I said over dinner at the inn's restaurant. Just tired. It's been a stressful month at work. Tell me about it. What's been going on? For the next 20 minutes, she spun an elaborate story about difficult clients and demanding deadlines, none of which I believed. But I nodded and asked follow-up questions and played the role of the supportive husband who was interested in his wife's professional challenges. You're a good listener, she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I always have been. You just stopped talking to me. She pulled her hand back. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you told me something real about your day? Something that wasn't carefully edited to avoid any mention of where you really go or who you really spend time with? Drew, I know about Troy. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Marissa went very still, her wine glass halfway to her lips. What? I know about Troy Bennett. I know about the gym, the hotel bar, the lies about girls' nights. I know everything. She set down her glass with shaking hands. Around us, other couples continued their romantic dinners, oblivious to the drama playing out at table 6. I don't know what you think you know. I know you've been having an affair. I know you've been planning to leave me. I know you've been telling your friends that I don't deserve you and that you found someone who does. Her face cycled through several emotions: denial, anger, fear, and finally something that looked like relief. How long have you known? Long enough? Are you going to divorce me? That depends. On what? I leaned back in my chair and studied my wife's face. Even now, caught red-handed in her betrayal, she was calculating, trying to figure out how to minimize the damage, how to come out of this with as much as possible. On whether you're willing to end it with Troy and try to save our marriage. She was quiet for a long time, staring at her plate like it contained the answers to all of life's difficult questions. What if I don't want to save it? She said finally. Then we'll get divorced, and you can be with Troy and live happily ever after. Just like that? Just like that. She looked up at me, suspicious. What's the catch? No catch. But if we're getting divorced, we're doing it my way. Clean, fair, and with Ruby's best interests as the top priority. What does that mean? It means you don't get to rewrite history and make me the villain. It means you don't get to take Ruby away from me or poison her against me. And it means everyone gets to know the real reason our marriage ended. Now she looked scared. You'd tell people about the affair? I wouldn't have to. Troy's not exactly discreet, and your friends aren't exactly trustworthy. How long do you think it would take for the whole story to come out? She knew I was right. In a social circle built on gossip and competition, her affair would be front-page news within a week of any divorce announcement. So what are you saying? That you'll keep quiet if I stay married to you? I'm saying I'll give you one chance to choose, Troy or me. But you have to choose, and you have to live with the consequences. We finished dinner in silence and went back to our room, where Marissa immediately tried her phone again. Still no signal. She looked like a junkie going through withdrawal. I need some air, she said, grabbing her jacket. I'll come with you. I'd rather be alone. I'm sure you would. But we're here together, remember? Digital detox weekend. Just us. We walked the property's trails in the moonlight, not talking, both lost in our own thoughts. I could feel her anger radiating off her in waves, but underneath it was something else. Uncertainty. For the first time in months, Marissa didn't know what came next. That night, we lay in the king-sized bed like strangers, each keeping to our own side. I listened to her breathing and knew she wasn't asleep. Drew, she said quietly, what if I can't choose? Then you already have. The next morning, we had breakfast in awkward silence and packed our bags. The drive home took 3 hours, and Marissa spent most of it staring out the window. As soon as we hit an area with cell service, her phone started buzzing with missed messages and voicemails. I watched her face as she scrolled through them, seeing her expression change from relief to confusion to something that looked like panic. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, she said, but she was typing frantically. When we got home, Ruby ran out to greet us, full of stories about her weekend with Mrs. Chen. I hugged my daughter and listened to her chatter about movies and ice cream and the art project they'd worked on together. Did you have fun in Vermont? She asked. We did, I said, not looking at Marissa. It was very educational. That evening, after Ruby was in bed, Marissa came into the kitchen where I was cleaning up from dinner. I've made my decision, she said. And? I want a divorce. I nodded like this was what I'd expected, which it was. Okay, I'll call Linda tomorrow and start the paperwork. Linda? My lawyer. You'll want to get one too. She stared at me like I was a stranger. You already have a lawyer? I've had a lawyer for 6 weeks, Marissa. I told you I wasn't stupid. 6 weeks? You've been planning this for 6 weeks? I've been preparing for this for 6 weeks. There's a difference. She sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly looking very young and very lost. What happens now? Now you get to find out what you've really earned. The thing about small suburban communities is that news travels faster than gossip, and gossip travels at the speed of light. By the time Marissa filed her counter-divorce papers 3 days later, half of Brookline already knew that the Kellers were splitting up and had their own theories about why. Most of those theories were wrong, but they were entertaining enough to keep the rumor mill running at full capacity. I heard he was having an affair with his secretary, Mrs. Henderson told Mrs. Chen over the fence. I heard she was having an affair with her personal trainer, Mrs. Chen replied, because she was on my team and had no problem seeding the conversation with actual facts. I heard they lost all their money in cryptocurrency, added Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses down, because every suburban scandal needs a financial component. The truth, as it always does, eventually won out over speculation, especially when that truth had help from people like Mike, who had been documenting Marissa and Troy's relationship through social media surveillance, and Nate, who had been collecting first-hand testimony from bar patrons who'd witnessed their public displays of affection. Your wife's friends are starting to distance themselves, Linda told me during one of our strategy sessions. Tiffany's been telling people she had no idea about the affair, and Amber's been posting inspirational quotes about toxic friendships on Instagram. What about Troy? That's where it gets interesting. Apparently, he's been telling people that Marissa was separated when they started dating, and that you were the one who'd been cheating. I laughed, which seemed to surprise Linda. What's funny about that? He's trying to rewrite history to make himself look like the good guy. Problem is, there are too many witnesses who know the real timeline. Speaking of witnesses, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Linda slid a folder across her desk. Marissa's lawyer is claiming that you've been stalking her and Troy, harassment, intimidation, deliberate interference with her personal relationships. I opened the folder and read through the complaint. According to Marissa's version of events, I'd been following her around town, showing up at places where she was trying to have private conversations and generally making her life miserable through psychological warfare. This is ridiculous, I said. I went to public places where I had every right to be. I know that, and you know that. But her lawyer is trying to paint you as the obsessive, controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife's independence. Can they make it stick? Not with the evidence we have, but it shows they're getting desperate, which means they're probably planning something bigger. Linda was right. The something bigger came in the form of a restraining order request, filed the same day that Troy Bennett suddenly decided to move back to California to pursue new opportunities. She's cutting him loose, Nate told me over beers that night, throwing him under the bus to save herself. How do you know? Because he came into my bar last night drunk off his ass and crying about how Marissa used him and threw him away like garbage as soon as things got complicated. Did he say anything specific? Oh, he said a lot of things. Like how she promised to leave you months ago but kept making excuses. Like how she was using him for intimacy and validation while keeping you around for financial security. Like how she told him you were basically roommates and that the marriage was already over. I took a long drink of my beer and processed this information. Anything else? Yeah. He said she's been telling people that you forced her to have the affair by being emotionally absent and unsupportive. That she was just trying to find the love and attention she wasn't getting at home. Classic cheater logic. It's not her fault she had an affair. It's my fault for not being worth staying faithful to. The good news is that he's not buying it anymore, and he's not being quiet about it. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday, which gave me 5 days to prepare my defense. Linda assembled a comprehensive case that included witness statements, photographic evidence, and a timeline that clearly showed Marissa's affair had been going on for months before I'd started my stalking behavior. The key is to let her hang herself, Linda explained. She's going to have to testify about her relationship with Troy, and every lie she tells can be contradicted with evidence. What if she tells the truth? Then she admits to adultery and destroys her own credibility. Either way, we win. The hearing was held in a small courtroom that felt more like a conference room, with just the judge, the lawyers, court staff, and a few observers. Marissa sat at the plaintiff's table in a conservative blue dress, playing the role of the frightened wife seeking protection from her unstable husband. Her lawyer, a young guy named Peterson, who specialized in making men look like monsters, laid out their case with theatrical flair. According to him, I was a controlling, obsessive husband who couldn't accept that my wife had outgrown our marriage and was seeking to punish her for trying to find happiness. Mr. Keller has engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment and intimidation, Peterson argued, following my client to restaurants, bars, and her place of employment, showing up at social events where he knew she would be present, making threatening statements about consequences and what she had earned. When it was Linda's turn, she calmly dismantled every accusation with facts, dates, and witness testimony. Your Honor, Mr. Keller attended public events and visited public establishments where he had every right to be. He made no threats, engaged in no illegal behavior, and committed no acts of harassment. What he did do was discover that his wife was having an extramarital affair and take steps to document that affair for divorce proceedings. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, Marissa's testimony. She took the stand looking nervous but determined, and Peterson walked her through her version of events. According to her story, our marriage had been troubled for years. She'd sought counseling and support from friends, and she'd eventually developed a close friendship with Troy that had helped her realize she deserved better treatment. Did this friendship ever become romantic in nature? Peterson asked. We developed feelings for each other, yes, but nothing physical happened until after I'd already decided to end my marriage. Linda's cross-examination was surgical. Mrs. Keller, you testified that you decided to end your marriage before beginning a physical relationship with Mr. Bennett. When exactly did you make this decision? In early April. And when did you inform your husband of this decision? We hadn't had that conversation yet. So you decided to end your marriage but didn't tell your husband. I was waiting for the right time. I see, and during this period when you'd decided to end your marriage but hadn't told your husband, were you still living in the marital home? Yes. Sharing a bed with your husband? Yes. Attending social events together like the charity auction on April 15th? Yes. Acting to all outward appearances like a married couple? Marissa's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Linda continued methodically destroying Marissa's timeline and credibility, using hotel receipts, witness statements, and social media posts to show that the affair had been going on for months, not weeks. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, listened to everything with the expression of someone who'd heard every variation of this story 1,000 times before. Mrs. Keller, she said when the testimony was complete, you're asking this court to issue a restraining order against your husband based on allegations of stalking and harassment. However, the evidence shows that Mr. Keller's behavior, while perhaps emotionally motivated, was neither illegal nor threatening. Furthermore, your credibility regarding the timeline of events has been seriously compromised by contradictory evidence. She denied the restraining order and recommended that both parties focus on resolving their divorce through mediation rather than litigation. Outside the courthouse, Marissa's lawyer tried to spin the decision as a minor setback, but I could see the defeat in Marissa's eyes. She'd played her last card and lost. "This isn't over," she said as we walked to our cars. "Yes, it is," I replied. "You just don't know it yet." The final act came 2 weeks later, at Ruby's school spring concert. It was one of those mandatory parental events that divorced couples usually navigate with careful choreography, separate seating, minimal interaction, focus on the child. But Marissa had decided to make a statement. She showed up with Troy, who had apparently decided not to move to California after all, and sat in the front row like they were the proud parents. Ruby saw them from the stage and looked confused. She'd been told that Mommy and Daddy were getting divorced, but no one had mentioned that Mommy's friend Troy would be attending her school events. After the concert, during the reception in the school cafeteria, the whispers started immediately. Parents who'd been following our divorce drama through the suburban gossip network suddenly had front row seats to the next chapter. "Is that the personal trainer?" I heard someone ask. "I can't believe she brought him to a school event," came the response. "That poor little girl." Ruby found me in the crowd, looking upset and embarrassed. "Daddy, why is Troy here? Everyone's staring." "I don't know, sweetheart. But don't worry about what other people think. You did great tonight." "Can we go home?" "Of course." But as we were leaving, Troy made the mistake of trying to assert some kind of parental authority. "Ruby, tell your dad we'll see you this weekend," he said, putting his hand on my daughter's shoulder. Ruby pulled away from him. "You're not my dad." "I know, but—" "Don't touch my daughter," I said quietly. Troy straightened up, probably thinking this was his moment to show everyone how tough he was. "Look, Drew, we're all going to be in each other's lives now. We might as well try to get along." "No, we're not. And no, we won't. Marissa and I are together. That makes me part of Ruby's life whether you like it or not." That's when I smiled, because Troy had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd threatened my daughter in front of a room full of witnesses, including teachers, parents, and school administrators. Actually, Troy, it doesn't. Marissa doesn't have custody of Ruby yet, and she won't be getting it, especially not if she's planning to expose my daughter to unstable men who think they have authority over other people's children. The room had gone quiet around us, everyone pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. "What's that supposed to mean?" Marissa demanded, finally joining the conversation. "It means that bringing your boyfriend to our daughter's school event was probably the dumbest thing you could have done for your custody case." I looked around the room at the faces of teachers who'd known Ruby since kindergarten, parents who'd watched her grow up, administrators who'd have to write reports about this incident. "It means that everyone here just got to see what kind of judgment you have when it comes to putting men before your daughter's well-being." "That's not what happened," Marissa protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Ruby's confused and embarrassed. Troy thinks he has parental authority he doesn't possess, and you thought this was appropriate behavior for a school event." I picked up Ruby's backpack and took her hand. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home." As we walked out of the cafeteria, I could hear the conversations starting behind us. By Monday morning, every parent in the school district would know that Marissa Keller had brought her boyfriend to her daughter's concert and let him act like he was Ruby's stepfather. Linda called me the next day with news that surprised no one. "Marissa's lawyer wants to settle. Full custody to you, standard visitation for her, 50-50 split of assets minus the money you've already protected." What changed their minds? Apparently, several parents from Ruby's school called the Family Services office to report concerns about the incident at the concert. Marissa's looking at a custody evaluation that she's unlikely to pass. And Troy? Out of the picture. Marissa's lawyer made it clear that any chance of favorable custody arrangements depends on her ending that relationship immediately. So she's cutting him loose again. Permanently this time. I thought about Troy Bennett, the Instagram fitness guru who'd thought he was upgrading from his paycheck-to-paycheck life to suburban prosperity. Instead, he'd gotten caught in the middle of a divorce, lost his meal ticket, and gained a reputation as the guy who broke up a family and then got dumped when things got complicated. What about Marissa? What about her? She gets to start over with half the assets. No husband, no boyfriend, limited custody, and a reputation as the woman who chose a fling over her family. That seems fair. It's what she earned. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later in the same courthouse where Marissa had tried to get a restraining order against me. This time, she sat quietly while the judge reviewed our settlement agreement and made it official. Ruby stayed with me in the house she'd grown up in, attending the same school with the same friends. Marissa moved to an apartment in Cambridge and started the process of rebuilding her life from scratch. Troy Bennett moved back to California after all, but not to pursue new opportunities. He moved back because his reputation in Boston was destroyed and no gym would hire him. Last I heard, he was working at a supplement store and posting angry rants about fake people and gold diggers on social media. Tiffany and Amber quietly distanced themselves from Marissa, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Mike stopped monitoring their social media accounts because there wasn't anything interesting to report anymore. Nate still serves drinks and collects gossip at the penalty box, but the Marissa Keller story has been replaced by newer, more entertaining suburban dramas. Mrs. Chen still babysits Ruby when I need help, and she still offers unsolicited wisdom about relationships and human nature. "You did the right thing," she told me recently, while we watched Ruby practice soccer in the backyard. "That little girl needs stability, not chaos." "I hope so." "You know what your wife's problem was? She thought she deserved better than what she had, but she never figured out what better actually meant. So she threw away something real for something that looked shiny. And now? Now she gets to find out what better actually costs. As for me, I'm still a project manager who builds strip malls and office complexes around Boston. I still drink beer and watch football and do all the boring suburban dad things that Marissa thought made me unworthy of her attention. But I also learned something important about myself during those months of careful planning and strategic revenge. I'm not as simple as people think I am. I'm not as passive as I used to be. And I'm definitely not as forgiving as I once was. The night our divorce became final, I sat in my kitchen with a beer and thought about the journey from "don't touch me until I decide you've earned it" to the judge's gavel falling on our marriage. Marissa had been right about one thing. I had to earn something. But it wasn't her touch or her approval or her love. I had to earn my self-respect back. I had to earn the right to look my daughter in the eye and know I'd fought for her. I had to earn the knowledge that I wouldn't be anyone's doormat ever again. And I had to earn the satisfaction of watching someone who thought they were smarter than me learn exactly what they'd actually earned through their choices. Ruby came downstairs for a glass of water and found me sitting there, smiling at nothing in particular. "What's so funny, Daddy?" "Nothing, sweetheart. Just thinking about how things worked out." "Are you happy?" I looked at my daughter, smart, resilient, and thankfully protected from the worst of what her mother had put our family through, and realized that I was. "Yeah, Ruby, I'm happy." "Good. You deserve to be happy." Out of the mouths of babes.